Live.
That way you want.
It's just ElementYouLive.com.
Yep. They'll be for the broadcast and for Artemis after the broadcast.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay, well, whatever. Whatever is deemed church business, I suppose, would be fine. Hi, everybody.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh, my goodness. Wow. We went there.
I believe soap is very important thing, so the expenses.
Oh, I can just make up anything I want.
Three weeks of trying to get through it. We got Matthew 12.
It is very difficult
Matthew
to get through.
5:12.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a hard few verses. So
we are
it
up
takes
to
about 3 weeks
5:13. And since Dana didn't get to read it last week.
Come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments, and teaches men so, shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. You have heard that it was said to those of old, You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council, but whoever says, You fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come to offer your gift. Agree with your adversary quickly while you are on your way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge hand you over to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Assuredly, I say to you, you will by no means get out of there till you have paid the last penny. You have heard that it was said to those of old, You shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. Furthermore, it has been said, Whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that whoever divorces his wife for any reason except sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a woman who is divorced commits adultery. Again you have heard that it was said to those of old, You shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black. But let your yes be yes, and your no, no. For whatever is more than these is from the evil one. You have heard that it was said, An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person. But whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you do not turn away. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? But if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Do not even the tax collectors do so? Therefore, you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect.
All right, awesome. So that's the whole rest of Matthew 5.
Yeah, I think I got the raw end of the deal on that one.
Well,
But just keep going until,
just keep
whenever.
going
And
until whenever, yeah.
you want me to go on into
13 through 16, and talk about that, because I think all of the rest of the stuff, we could probably cover this whole batch of stuff in one broadcast, but I think it needs to kind of be wrapped around the theme, which I think is what he's saying in 13 through 16, which is, you're the salt of the earth, you're the light of the world. So let's kind of unpack those two statements. What does it mean to be salt of the earth and the light of the world?
It also is a
That's
preservative.
too much
It
salt.
is, and that's what they used to use for their meat and everything.
Cousin twice removed or something, I don't know, but they had this smokehouse in the backyard. It was probably not much bigger than this table, but around 6 or 8 feet high, right? And when you go in, and you would literally there'd be, the whole thing was just full of smoke or whatever, where they would cedar wood or apple wood or oak or whatever they happened to be smoking. Hashtag absorb.
even more so.
Wow.
Now you.
So, cooking tips from ElementYou this morning. There is that element of flavor of the next thing, which is the chocolate. Which then the chocolate's that. Every time you watch a cooking show, you always see that they've got this little cup of salt that's on there. Sprinkle a little salt. Oh, salt this some more. And that's the thing. So much bad, right? And so many Christian lives that don't carry that flavor of God. And that, which kind of goes right into this thing. You're the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hid. So this idea of having this light on top of a hill, shining all around it in the darkness. A big light elevated above you. It's impossible to miss, right? A city in a valley. Well, that could be really easy to miss because the light's down there and you're looking out this way and the landscape obscures it. But if it's elevated above you, the same thing, covering it up with a basket, you can't see through it. Why would you do that? It's going to light the whole house.
That's the reason that the lighthouse is not built just directly on the shore, but is actually built on top of a tower, usually either an empty tower or just a house for the lightkeeper to live in, but the tower has no purpose except just to raise the light higher for men to see it.
Right.
Well, which is interesting because I was looking it up last week, and the curvature of the Earth, you can only see about 5K, 3.1 miles. So if it was completely flat and somebody was here and here, the furthest you could get it to go from a flat.
And it's amazing. Did you guys, anybody catch Shark Week this week?
No. I figured JoJo would tell me all about it.
I think we've got it all TiVo'd. So if you want to hang out and watch like 12 hours of just sharks, he'd be happy to do that with you. Some of it's actually pretty good. We love Shark Week. It's like a national holiday around here. But there was an episode this year, and I don't remember what it was called. I think it was the new Air Jaws, where they were filming them at night, right? And I'm not affiliated with the Discovery Channel anyway. But they got these new cameras that have extreme low light sensitivity, right? And the camera itself worked so well that if, for example, if you went into an indoor NFL football stadium, right, turned all the lights out, all right, completely pitch black, and lit one do that, but it's drawing all of that visible light spectrum off of a single candle in a stadium full of darkness, right? That's how powerful light is, right? All we have to do is look for it. All we have to do in this case, Jesus is telling us, is be it, right? A city set on a hill can't be hid. A lighthouse is, in the scope of the ocean, a relatively small thing, but they can be seen for sometimes hundreds of miles away, and the light, maybe a few feet across, right? If we look at the stars in the sky, we're seeing these things from billions of light years away, and yeah, they may seem as pinpricks to us, but we still see them, right? Light, I mean, it's an amazing thing, right? And we've all heard the story, the adage that light and dark punishes it, so to speak. So if we want to change our world and be the example, all we've got to do is live like Jesus is telling us to here, right? Somebody want to maybe kind of unpack as we start looking at this. Verse number 17, we've got to talk about iotas and dots and tittles and stuff like that, and explain what on earth we're talking about here. Nobody giggle. Too late, Kip.
I didn't giggle. I smiled vaguely.
You giggled. All right, so somebody start with verse number 17 and talk about what Jesus is saying when he says, you know, he hasn't come to abolish the law but fulfill it, and not an iota or a dot will pass. You know, what is all this about when we look at this passage? All right. James Brown, he was
You got Kip on that
Moving
one.
on.
He was the one that's got
That's
cut
the one
too.
I was not expecting. Or the cross of a T.
Okay.
Mentioning the things, like some of it is simply for the sheer purpose of saying you are not like the other nations and you can't do this on your own, because
interested in the heart. So Jesus and you had the
moral and
the
the
moral
physical
laws,
and the-
right? And then you had the yeah.
And-
So.
Practice the law, the one thing you're going to come to realize is, oh crap, I'm in trouble. I can't do it. Right?
This is just a picture of grace.
Yeah.
No, one thing that he does say is not until all things are fulfilled. Because I do actually know, I have several friends that have, debated and argued with me that, no, the Mosaic Law is still in effect even for Christians, because he even says, I didn't come to destroy it, but to fulfill it, so we're supposed to still do that. One thing that I would say is, until all things are fulfilled, would be his death, resurrection, and ascension. Because the people, even while he's actually physically there, they are still under Mosaic law. So he's saying, you can't just say, well, I'm not going to the temple anymore, I'm going to follow Jesus. Followed the Mosaic law. But at this point, after that, we are not bound.
Paid the price for all, and there is no need for the sacrificial
Right.
system from the Mosaic law anymore.
Yeah, I didn't want to get too far off, but I wanted to throw that out there because that is, like you say, where somebody will take one little section and blow it completely out of proportion. That's one that
you
I've
see
seen
that happen
a lot.
a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of times they'll say, "Well, you don't follow the law anymore. You wear polyester and cotton."
Right.
Yeah, so
We took, or like you said, they made it harder. He took one thing that was hard enough to do and then made it. If you just read it, it's actually more difficult.
Yeah.
Not only do you need to do this, but you can't.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
You have to do it, and you can't do it.
Exactly. I mean, and that's what he says it right.
Easy.
I can
Sweet.
totally.
I can go around and
am
not kill people all day long.
I'm quite certain I can probably live my life without murdering anybody. Right?
Probably.
Certainly not without the temptation to do so.
Right.
Right? Depends on how traffic is on a
Right.
given day.
You're right.
But then, and depending on which version you're reading, verse 22 reads a little bit differently here. He says, everyone who's angry with his brother, some versions read, who's angry with his brother without cause. Right? And I tend to think that's probably a little better translation, because there are other passages of Scripture that teach us that there's nothing wrong with being angry, but it's this
Be angry. Sit
unnecessary.
Jesus got angry, made a whip, and drove people out.
Yeah,
like
flipped
whipping
tables.
them, flipping
Yeah,
tables.
right,
I
yeah.
mean,
with a whip.
Yeah.
it's like Indiana Jones style, man. I just see him with the...
That's how I hear it.
Your brother, that's where it says raka, right? Or then to say you fool will be liable to the fire of hell, right? So, and then he talks about being reconciled to your brother. So he's talking about how do we deal with our anger, right? What does this look like? Well, the law said, well, don't kill anybody.
Easy enough.
Easy, easy. But now it says,
I got this.
I've got to manage my anger. That's a whole different thing there, which is harder, which is more difficult here, law or grace.
Not even from a difficulty standpoint. One of them relies totally on you and your ability to do it. The other one, totally relying on Jesus for it.
Right. Yeah. Because I can.
So not only was
not
it easier,
kill.
but it was you.
Right.
I didn't kill anybody today.
Sweet.
Look what I did.
What?
But he tells you can't do it. If you even think the amount of fries I should have had at lunch, that all those things that we just go crazy over.
Yeah, and we
And
So
then
you're a
there's somebody,
homicidal maniac.
and
and
have
you're
the Son
ruining
of
that.
God tell you
It didn't give you enough fries.
you can't go to heaven because
Because of that.
of that.
Yeah, because that's sin,
Right.
Because it's selfish, right? I gotta throw it out there just for kicks and giggles. The stuff that we get so worked up and mad about. Me and Sheila went on a bike ride yesterday,
man.
right? And so we're
She's
up
like, it's coming back.
Oh,
we're,
no, it's-
we're
it was-
in Pisgah National Forest. We're doing like a little under 20 miles. It's just a
It's
really
beautiful.
beautiful,
Pisgah is very nice.
really
It's
relaxing
very nice.
bike ride. We're having a great time.
You probably
And-
find a lot of Pokemon out there.
and we get we're looking for Pokemon. So we're on our way back from up near the hatchery, and of course it's behind us and.
It's probably at least a mile. I'd say close to 2.
Of them is there's actually about 3 guys, and you can tell they're all in like $70,000 sports cars, and they're probably street racing somewhere up in that area.
They probably came from the race and they're going to go back
Right.
on the force. You
And,
can
and
tell.
so, but one of the guys has got the top down on the thing, and as he goes past us, I mean, he's literally fist in the air. One that held you up. Christians get that mixed up is they say, well, if they'll ask me to forgive them, I'll forgive them. That's not the way that Jesus operates. You need to forgive them regardless of whether they come to you and ask or not. But then he says, if you know they've got something against you, go to them and fix that relationship, right? And a lot of us, we tend to be like the dwarves of Moria, where we carry around a book of grudges that and we're literally oh.
Not for them. You're not doing them a favor. You're not being
Chances
say I went through and I didn't do anything and to apologize.
I didn't get it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Moving on.
So anyway, he talks
I've
about
always held that against you.
not holding grudges, reconciling quickly. This goes back to the idea of being peacemakers, right? When we talked about it last week, the week before, and the week before, blessed are the peacemakers. This is about those who make peace with each other. But then he goes on, he talks about a lot of different aspects of life, and the next one he says, don't commit adultery. Again, this one should be pretty easy, right? I mean, I'm only going.
Never been married, but when I've heard people talk about these stories, I'm going, how do you accidentally
Right.
do that?
It does not happen by accident.
It does not happen by accident.
Never
Did
has.
you fall?
No.
Tripping and falling does not.
So, but here's the thing that is really a snare that is so prevalent in our culture, because it says everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her. And here's the thing. It's not a matter of seeing a woman and going, oh, that's a beautiful woman. That's not what it's saying here. It's seeing a woman and going, that's a beautiful woman. I'd love to have her.
Right.
That's where it crosses the line.
And proceed to.
Mentally.
Yes, and then proceed
Right.
to mentally.
Right.
Right? We live in a culture that is super saturated by sex and by sexual imagery. Whether those be point where we go, you know what? Even though I know I'm going to be bombarded by stuff that's going to make this a true temptation, how do I avoid falling into that snare? You're not a guy, Charity. You can't raise your hand and go, ooh,
I just
ooh,
not
ooh.
hear the
I know how all guys can avoid that snare.
Lower your voice a little bit.
Tell us all.
Yes, please. Yes, by all means.
Isaac's not here, so I have to say this for him. So, just from
I don't know. Maybe he willed it to her.
no,
I'm-
no, I know what Isaac would be thinking about right now. We had a video at school a while
Okay.
back, and it had it was to teach specifically girls that to show them, hey, don't do this because it can on the internet because it can.
Kind of imagery. And so, she ended up getting picked on as a result of that, and I think she ended up committing suicide.
Because there was a guy
And
who was
so-
cyber stalking her and threatening
Yeah,
her.
right. So let me finish. So the basically the premise of the video was don't bully people, right?
And don't take pictures and put them online.
But then, as Isaac's sitting there, he's seeing these, attractive pictures of this girl who's, whether she's dead or alive or whatever, these are naughty pictures of a teenage girl, and he's like, this is the kind of thing that's going to cause me to slip in my walk with Christ. I don't need to see. Can handle this is we hold each other accountable, right? If you find an issue, you have somebody that you can talk to. I've got friends who have done that, and we came to an agreement that, hey, dude, until you get this area of your life sorted out, you don't have internet access in your home anymore. You don't have a smartphone. You have a flip phone, and you get rid of all this stuff so that you don't put yourself in that position. One of the ways I do it at home is I was looking for stuff about a board game online the other day. And a link that should have went to stuff about the board game went to stuff that wasn't about the board game. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So as soon as that happened, I click close browser, clear history, and then I immediately walk straight to my wife and say, honey, this is what just happened. This is what.
Anytime that you can say, well, it's something innocent, because there was a movie that came out not long ago, and several friends went to see it and said, oh, it's very funny, it's a very good movie, but every review, even non-Christian, even people who are adamantly against Christ, said it should have been rated higher than.
A lot of it has to do with just filtering what we're exposed to, right? Tearing your eye out. I mean, not literally plucking your eye out. Right? We do have, even though we're bombarded with it, we do have the ability to control what we are exposed to, right? And in doing that, whether this be for men or for women or whatever, let's talk about this a little bit just with women, because one of this comes from, do we have healthy marriages, right? How do we make our marriages healthy?
It's true. I mean, and I think as a wife, if something really cool happens, or if something happens, I'm driving down the road and I need to tell somebody, I'll call my sister. But if you're not the first dude that I call, then I need to check my relationship. I mean, it's that simple. You're my best friend. And usually the only reason I wouldn't call you is because I know you're busy, whatever you're doing, right? But other than that, I call my sister.
I call you whether you're busy or not. You're at work.
And then
That's
I
how
don't
I roll.
answer.
That's how I roll.
Yeah. And then sometimes
Because what's
I'm
more
busy or
important
not,
than
or
me?
whether
she's busy or not.
Yeah.
A phone call.
I don't care if she's
Or
talking
text.
to her boss. This
Or
is
several
me
texts.
we're talking about.
Yeah, so I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna have to talk to
succession.
him later because I'm busy.
Bombed.
But if saying that you can't have guy friends, and you and I both know. I mean, I've got friends. I consider Ken my friend.
committed adultery. To really kind of condense the Old Testament adultery laws, it basically came down to a spouse, particularly an unbeliever, I think is specific to that passage.
He wants to depart, let him
And
depart.
yeah, an unbeliever leaves, says, "Forget it, I'm not having you or your Christ," and then just completely abandons the family. That would be a biblical grounds for divorce, and those are the only two, right? But even in those situations, reconciliation and healing is God's design and God's plan, because God hates divorce, right? It's never been God's plan. It never will be God's plan.
Well, I think when we read this, because I also know someone who has been divorced, and she tells me she feels like used goods, that she's not good enough.
Right.
And that needs to be very clear when we're reading this. It's because the women were actually treated with less respect because they were just throwing them out. Oh, not you. That's not what this is saying at all.
And to clarify what I'm saying there too, when I say God hates divorce, I also would say God hates overeating, God hates drunkenness, God hates lying, God hates cheating on your taxes, God hates knowing your neighbor needs somebody to mow their grass and not going over and helping them mow their grass when you have the ability to mow their grass, right? Any sin God hates. And God doesn't differentiate divorce from anything else. He's just simply saying, look, my plan is for one man, one woman, one lifetime.
Right.
And if one of you is not willing to do that and sexually abandons that marriage or physically abandons that marriage, then there is a grounds and a reason for that. But that's not my plan.
Right. It's not the plan. God knows it happens, because he even said, look, and they kept asking him, can I? God knows that in every situation we're still human. We still fail.
Right. Don't make oaths you can't keep.
Beyond any other covenant, though, marriage is not just a covenant that I make with you of, you're my brother.
Right.
Marriage between a man
first
and
of
a
all,
woman.
you and I, there we go.
Yeah, marriage.
Thank you.
Like I was going to say, you are my brother
Yes,
covenant.
Okay. Okay.
If you would listen.
I really was.
Sorry, I lost you at marriage and me and you.
But marriage, like between a man and a woman, is actually a shadow and a representation of Christ and the church.
Right.
So it's a very important covenant to God.
Right. And
Exactly.
because Christ isn't going to break that relationship between him and us, at the same time, we should be equally
No
committed.
matter what we do as the church, no matter how many times we harlot ourselves off to whatever.
I think
That was like
great that the
perfect.
phone just
Beeped it out.
the throne by Jerusalem. You can't swear by even the hairs of your head because you can't make one white or black. What is he talking about here when he's talking about making oaths and not doing that? What's the big deal?
I think that's what Kip was showing, that when the marriage covenant is an oath to each other with God included.
Right.
But let's say when you bring God into it, then I mean God is true, and it never happens. So God may take you home tonight, and now you've said that something's going to happen, and you can't fulfill that. You never know. So, I mean, because God, to Him, oaths and promises are true. They are who He is. He can't not be true. And we are reflections of God, but we're not Him. And
Well, Yeah, and it's also kind of like you were saying the Old Testament, or whoever was saying the Old Testament grounds of divorce. You burned my coffee, you did this or that, so it's done. You could say, well, I swear by, my house that I will do such and such. Your house burns down. Well, you know what? My house didn't stay. I mean, it's an exaggeration in that at that point, but you can always, whatever you swear by, you can find an out. So God's saying, don't even.
I might enter into a contractual agreement with you and say, I will pay you back $50 a month using the value of the building for $5,000 as collateral, and if I don't pay it, then you're certainly able to take that house back and reclaim it, just like you take out a mortgage on a home. That's a totally different thing. That's a transaction, that's a business arrangement or whatever. But if I go, dude, just trust me, I swear to God I'll pay you back, that may not be God's plan, and I don't have the ability to control that.
Or the authority.
Or the authority to the point where I can make those kinds of commitments. Right?
right.
Last two passages.
Most people was the dude that was screaming and yelling. We would just scream and yell back. Probably there would be hand gestures between the two, and that would have been the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Paid for their tip and said thank you, have a good day, because in that sense they were trying to heal a relationship. They were trying to be a peacemaker back at the top. They were trying to bring that
It only starts with one incident, and then it is never ending. You have a group of people. Okay, now hit me over here, and this will be done.
Yeah.
This will be over.
Ow.
We can walk away.
Protect you, Kip.
You can't hit him.
Gonna leave that alone. Because Jesus even says, if a man knows that his house is going to be broken into, is he not going to put on armor and arm himself
Right.
to protect it?
Right.
So he's obviously separating the two.
Right. And I think that's good word choice. Retaliation versus defense. Those
Yeah,
are two
that is very
completely
good.
different.
I'd also
Right.
like to point out that he's speaking to individuals here. I've seen an awful lot of this being quoted recently.
Something to Kip, whether I know it or not. He feels the need to sue me because he wants my tunic, and my tunic is enough. If I can give him something else to diffuse the whole thing that's worth even more, maybe my tunic plus, and that diffuses the whole thing much better than a battle that, because if I give him what he wants, this may,
Now he's going to do it again.
we may still have a friendship
Right.
after this. There's still a chance for that. But if we spend months or years battling or end up hating each other over a piece of clothing, because at that point we don't even know where he thinks he started it. I think he thinks I started it. I think he started it, and it ended up with him just wanting to take something from me that was mine, which according to God isn't. It doesn't belong to me
Yeah, it's not
anyway.
yours
Which is
anyway.
another thing we have to remember. This stuff isn't even yours.
Right.
If he wants your tunic, give it to him.
to him.
God,
Well, and you're-
I'll give you another tunic.
You're
I'll
talking
give you
about
another
how
one.
national.
Allowing themselves to be sued and have their coat and their cloak taken, to be smacked on one cheek and turning the other also. I got to go back to Martin Luther King Jr., right? Here's a guy who was right in what he was asking for and did through civil disobedience to the government that he was a part of, or to the government that he was a citizen of, would be a better way of saying that, found himself insulted, found himself in the position to any normal person would want retaliation for some of the treatment that he received in his leadership of the civil rights movement. But this is the kind of thing that he modeled it after this passage of scripture. Let's be really you reject Christ. And in that situation, better to stand for Christ on in your dying breath than to reject him, right? Those who persecute you, because here's the thing: God makes the sun rise on everybody, the good, the evil, and if you just love the people that love you back, what good is that? Everybody does that. Even the people that don't love God do that. But he says he says you must be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. And there are varying interpretations of this word perfect. I think one of my favorites is the word really means a level of maturity. But in this case, I think a better interpretation is complete. And if we're going to be complete as reflections of Christ, as followers of Christ, then love even for those who hate us. I mean, how do we do this?
I had another thought. I have to go back on that.
Go for it.
Just real quick. The more we go, the more I realize all of this is an example of a shining light. If we go back towards the beginning, and then if you think of darkness as evil people or non-believers or people who are persecuting around you, the importance of being a shining light in that darkness is that other people, the darker it is, the easier it is to see you. You stand out even more.
Right. But the black stadium with the single candle.
Right. The difference being is you're in a situation where there's just evil darkness everywhere. Right. But because it's so dark and you're the shining light, it's so easy to see you. And people are watching. Even if they don't know they're watching.
Americans, those men aren't our enemies, right? They are the people we're trying to reach, right? Those were people who were caught up in darkness, who found themselves living murderous ideals, and rather than hate them,
be real life examples of what happens when we have the right attitude.
Well, and I think Ken hit the nail on the head here. Our job isn't to cast out darkness, right? There's too much darkness for us to cast out, and we can't. You know, you're literally waving your hands and
man, or I what they believe and the lie that they are convinced of and make them my enemy, then I am not loving them. And I am not being a light. I am being the exact same kind of darkness.
unless we
that
get
I hate.
derailed simply talking about other religious ideologies. I mean, and I don't want to politicize what we're doing here on ElementYou, but we're in the middle of a presidential election at the time of this broadcast in North America, in the United States, and you know, we see animosity and hatred between members of various political factions and political parties in the United States simply because you're red and I'm blue, or you're a donkey and I'm an elephant, or whatever. Situations. Whatever's wrong, take care of itself. And if we spend time putting the truth out there, the truth will do what the truth does, right?
Truth, not ours. We get to plant the seeds. We get to be the light. We get to be the salt. But it's God who does everything else. We aren't salt. We aren't born as a light.
I was born.
You were born as a salt. We weren't born as salt. Or we weren't born as a light. We were born in sin, and it's Jesus who gives us the light. So lest we ever get to the idea that we are the light, no, Jesus is the light through us, and that's how we're able to do what we do.
Right. So we're at probably the longest broadcast, or certainly one of them that we've ever done. But I think it's really important that we've talked about, and there's so much more that we could unpack with this same passage of scripture. But I think that the point here is again, I just got to go back to what Ken said. It's not about batting away the darkness. It's about shining as a light, right? And so that's what we're called to do as believers, is to simply be the light of the world, to be that city set on a hill. And this way, you know.
That sound at a lighthouse makes me turn.
That's how I always imagine.
That's a foghorn.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Whatever.
No, they
If
do
you
make
have a light-
noise.
If you have a light with a foghorn, whew.
that's right. So here's the thing. Maybe today you're hearing this broadcast, whether you're watching it live or you're tuning in after the fact, and you realize, you know, you've been living in darkness. and the light is shining and you want to be a part of that, there's no magic words, no magic prayer, nothing that you have to do to become a follower of Christ other than to simply say, hey, Jesus is alive. He died and rose from the dead for me, and I want him to be in charge of my life. I want him to be my Lord. And if you'll genuinely ask God to let you have that, that's it. However you want to word that, however you want to phrase that, then you will become a follower of Christ. Now, Facebook, on Twitter. You can even subscribe to us on YouTube and get in touch with us there. You can also go to elementc3.com to get plugged into Element Church, and we want you to get plugged in with the church, even if it's not us. We will help you find that place. There are links that we threw up on the screen if you want to give and contribute as well. Certainly that's not why we're here, but that does make the ministry possible. So we're just going to pray for you guys right now. We're going to pray for each other and just ask God to help us do all of the stuff that we've talked about today. And we'll see you next week. That they'll give their lives wholeheartedly to you, find a place of service, find a group of people that share their faith in you, and just connect and serve you together. We love you. We praise you in Jesus' name.